Hey guys, welcome to the very first course that I encourage everybody that wants to go through understanding Photoshop to actually look at. Reason being that Photoshop is actually quite extensive in the amount of things that you can do because you can manipulate photos, you can manipulate, even documents, you can manipulate just a variety of things, right? As long as it's digital, you can actually manipulate it in Photoshop. Anyway, so today is today is the day where we dive deep into understanding how to become a professional graphic designer. And we're going to start from the basics. We're going to start from, just the basic stuff that you need to understand because it's the basics that make up the really complicated stuff. Okay. So, what are we going to be learning in this course? In this course, we're going to learn a bunch of things. We're going to understand this interface, understand everything about it, and basically be able to find our way around just to have, ease of navigation. We're going to understand layers. We're going to understand layer styles. We're going to understand blending modes. We're going to understand adjustment layers. Then we're going to do a class project where we work with images to sort of use all the things we learned in first 5 lessons to, create something. Then we're going to do shapes, understand shapes, then understand text, or in the way we pronounce it, it's more about, we call it type, really. So understand type, and then we're going to do a class project again to show you guys how to edit documents, files, and pictures with everything that you've learned before we then go to the intermediate courses. So when we're done with all that, we're going to learn how to export the work because it's not usable if all your work just stays in Photoshop, right? So let us dive right into it. Let's not waste too much time. So guys, so the first thing on our list, like if you remember, I said that we need to understand our interface, right? So that means that we need to understand the entire workspace that we're dealing with. Now, here's the reason why workspace is kind of interesting and why it's important that you understand it. So think about it like your desk, right? So if you don't understand what each tool on your desk will do for you, then it would be very, very hard for you to actually use the desk, right? So we're going to start by talking about a bunch of things. We're going to talk about the menu bar. Let me just write that out so you can see that. We're going to talk about the menu bar. So the menu bar is something that I want to try to explain a bit because the thing is, if you understand how these things work, it'll be easy for you to sort of grasp everything else as we go along. So the menu bar is kind of like in every application, every software that you are going to work with, whether on your Windows system or on your, Apple system. Basically, how it works is they come with their own different, menu icons. And that's the bar we call the menu bar. This bar right here that has the file, edit, image, layer, type, select, filter, view, window, and help, right? So these are the menu items, right? So there are a bunch of different cool things that are hidden in these bars, but I'm just going to work with explaining just the basics of it so that you can understand how to use them and, you don't get overwhelmed. Because I want to take you, across the board, basically. So now we've explained what the menu bar is, we're going to talk about the toolbar. So the toolbar is this little handy thing right here. So there are a lot of tools. And the funny thing about it is there are even hidden tools. So you have the artboard tool hiding in there. You have the elliptical marquee tool. We have the single row marquee tool. You also have the lasso tool, the polygonal lasso tool. You have the quick selection. You just have a bunch of tools. And if you see this arrow here that points down, it means that that tool has more tools to it or more tools in its arsenal, right? So so that's why I said if I take you through everything all at once, it will be kind of complicated for you to grasp at the start. So I'm just going to do it in such a way that I know it's going to be easy for you to assimilate. So right after the toolbar, we're going to talk about the options bar because see, notice how if I change a tool, this place just sort of changes, right? Watch this. If I pick this tool, it's changing. If I pick this, it's changing. If I pick this, watch this side, it's changing. If I pick this, the same thing. So this is actually called the options bar. Reason is that for every tool, there are a bunch of options that are available to you, and there are a bunch of options that are not available to you except you're using that tool. What do I mean? So let's say, for example, I want to move this title around. Now, there's so many things I could do if I use this. For example, here's what happens if I select auto select. So auto select simply says that whatever layer I'm clicking on, don't worry if you don't understand what layers are right now, I will explain. So whatever layer I click on when it's on auto select, I will pick that layer up. Watch this. So I can pick this up. If I go here, I can pick this up. See what happens? If I come back here, I can pick this up and watch this place. It keeps switching in between both of them. So this is this is this, and just like that. So I personally don't like to use that because that's not how my workflow goes. I prefer to select the layer I want to move and then move it, right? I'm on the options bar, so it's moving the options bar, and then select the layer I want to move and then move it. The reason is I just feel like that gives me more control. It's stressful sometimes, but it gives me more control. So then I can also select, do I want to select a group? So for example, watch what happens. So you're not seeing anything right now, but when I make this visible, see, there's just a bunch of things I could do. So auto select gives me the ability to do that. Gives me the ability to do that, gives me the ability to do that. So there are a bunch of other things. You could also show the transform controls. If I wanted to maybe make this center, I could work on this like this and see what happens. So I could align it, but understand, I'm not trying to do all those really cool but complicated stuff right now. I just want to show you guys the basics so you can understand how to make this thing work by yourself. So that's the option bar and sort of all the things that happen. So with every tool, there are different options. There are more things to play around with. So let's talk about the sweet thing about this that I really like is the panels. Now, the panels are these things you see over here. I just like when you look at these things, they look so nice, right? Yeah, they do. But the thing about it is you can adjust the way they look. You could tell it to squeeze in. You could tell it to squeeze out. You could, move this color and just bring it here. You could take libraries and bring it here. You can basically adjust the panels how you feel they will work best for you. So typically I like to just leave it the way the essentials, the Photoshop essentials layout. But you could, I'm just showing you just so you know what is available to you to do. You could move everything if you wanted to. And then when you wanted to deal with layers, you just click it, your layers will be out. You could also adjust this and sort of bring it up a bit. So there's just a bunch of things you could do here. Now, the beautiful thing about panels is that it gives you access to a lot of other cool functions, yeah? But you also have to realize that because it's giving you access to a bunch of other cool functions, yeah? Means that there's just like, would I say, there's no limit, so to say, even though there is, but there's no limit to the amount of things you can put on your panel. Now, if, for example, let's say I make the mistake of closing this particular panel, the color is gone, I want to close libraries too, and I'm like, closing all these things, and, it's just, it's kind of scary because I don't know where all my, my panels went to. So what I'm going to do is just come over here to Window, and in Window, I'm going to see Libraries. When I click it, it will open up back. in window, I'm going to see color. When I click it, it will open up back. Alternatively, if I was to just press F6, let me just show you guys that. If I was to just press F6, color will come out. So there are a bunch of shortcuts, yeah? So for ease of access, if you're using a Mac, I'm using a Windows system right now, so I may be saying Control, I may be saying Alt, but if you're using a Mac, then Control just simply means Command, and then, Alt simply means Option. So if I say Control this, or Control D, or Control J, whatever, I'm just basically telling you that's using the Mac to say Command D or Command J. Basically, if I say Alt this, then it's just basically Option. You're smart. You figure it out. I believe. So then we also need to talk about the document tab, which is this thing over here. And this thing is real fantastic because it helps us to understand, first of all, our zoom percentage. Then it tells us what kind of, channel we're working with. Are we working with RGB? Are we working with CMYK? What happens if I press Command Y or Control Y? So now we've changed it to CMYK, but I don't want to work on CMYK because I'm not printing this and I just want to use it on screens. So I'm going to work you guys through how to even get to this part. So when you start up your Photoshop, it will, bring up a dialog box that basically says what you want to start with. And then you can choose a bunch of options over here. Yeah. So let me explain what that looks like. So you have a bunch of standard document types like US paper, international paper, photo. You just have a bunch of things. Now, watch, if I click each one, it changes the width, the resolution, and the amount of options that I have. If I go back to the US paper, see, it changes again. And I could just select CMYK, whatever it is I want to work with, or whatever kind of color mode I want to work with, I can select this here. Now, there are a bunch of color profiles to select. I always just use working RGB because that's standard. That's more or less what people that I know that do graphic design, that's what they use. So because I tend to work a lot with other designers. So, we're working with width and height. So if you're not good with mathematics, you could easily just do Google search or searches for different, let me just open Google. So you see, so different, would I say, dimensions for different purposes. For example, we have access, let this just load. Okay, so we have access to, paper dimensions, let's just see. Because I know there are a bunch of things that you could look at. So paper dimensions, we're just going to open that up. So there are a bunch of dimensions, right? And you could just use inches. So this is width, this is height, and this is in millimeters, right? Yeah, so, excuse me. So there are a bunch of things you could just use this for if you need to get particular sizes. Or you could just take your tape roll and measure the things you want to create your designs for. If you're going to print, please always use CMYK, simply because actual colors in real life are better if you print them. They look better if you use CMYK as opposed to RGB, because RGB basically means that you're mixing red, green, blue together to get this white that we're seeing here, and I'll explain what I mean. Let me show you that right now in our channels. So if I go here, where's my channel right now? Okay, this is our channels. So if I go here, watch what happens. So I have RGB, right, which is the one that's at the top. Then I have red, then I have green, then I have blue. So here's the thing. So if I maybe put this up, see what happens to the design when I keep surfing. So because of the fact that this is, it's just trying to render this in such a way that it's picking out what has reds, what doesn't have reds, and stuff like that. But when I put RGB, it shows everything. Now it's just showing me the things that have green and in what percentages they have those greens. So that's why I always, if I'm working on something that will be on the desktop, I will use RGB. If it will be on print, I will use CMYK. or I would do it in RGB, then I'll convert to CMYK. I know it's a lot, but it'll be easier as we go along. So we also have this little nudge here, which is more or less think of it like status bar, basically telling us how much, percentage of RAM we've used, not RAM, so to say, more like space, right? Because it shows you the amount of space that your project is taking. Watch what happens if I, surf to maybe a different project. Watch this. See, this is different. This is different. If I come back, this is different. If I go back to untitled, recovered, this is different. So, and then you have a bunch of other options when you click this. It's just a lot of other things that we're going to touch on in our intermediate and more advanced courses. But for right now, you don't necessarily need those things. I just want to show you what you could use to go right into Photoshop and do something amazing. So without any, okay, there's one extra thing I'd like to show you. I just remembered. So let's say you've looked at this layout and you don't like it and you want to just change the way it looks. You could come here, go to workspace, and maybe go to graphic and web. That will give you a bunch of different other options. Or you could just go to workspace and then maybe click essentials. Watch this. Workspace and then click essentials. See what happens? It gives me back what I was on because I already edited this. So I'm just going to go here and say reset essentials. And you see I'll get the old layout that I had before I started to switch up things. So aside that, there's also one more thing you may want to know. I don't regularly use this feature, but I mean, it's good to show you. So you could search for, things that you want to use. I personally don't really use it. That's just the honest truth. I don't really use it because I basically know where everything that I want to get is. For example, if I want to get my crop tool, I just go here and I see my crop tool because I've already memorized them. But you could if you want to do that. And with that, I think we've come to the end of this particular conversation. So we're going to move to the next episode, basically. All right, guys. Bye. Ciao.